Well, this episode was a real refresher after the dodgy writing that I saw in episode 4. Here we have a more relaxed, yet slightly more complex episode of Handshakers, where the whole concept of being a handshaker and the whole setup of Tazuna always having to hold Kiyori's hand is used to the story's advantage, and this episode has an additional theme, if you like, one of card-based strategy games that actually works with this anime style in my opinion. So in episode 5 of Handshakers, we see further developments of Tazuna's so-called things must mesh ideology. Now, I didn't really understand what that meant properly up until this episode, but now it's clear that when Tazuna saw that automated food delivery thing in Chizuru's restaurant place, he focused hard and tried to obsessively figure out how that system worked so that things would make sense or mesh in his mind. This scene didn't necessarily make Tazuna into a more well-rounded character for me, as he is still a cliche leading school-age male, but it did make Tazuna's whole approach to thinking clearer. So then later on, Tazuna and Kiyori are walking through Japan and suddenly Kiyori separates from Tazuna and Kiyori is lost. How does this happen? Goodness knows. And, you know, for a really important plot point in this episode, it really should have been more sensical as to why Kiyori separated from Tazuna in the first place. They were holding hands, right? So what the hell happened? So anyway, Kiyori feels loneliness, but then Lily appears and helps Kiyori. Now, I totally forgot about Lily, and frankly, I only recognised her from previous episodes, because I recognised that she's the one character with huge breasts, and so Lily takes Kiyori to a card strategy game tournament where Lily's younger brother is an ace player. Now, I must say that the whole card game strategy thing in this episode was actually really nice to watch. This anime is a visual fest, right? So us being presented with a strategy card game being played out within a visual fest along with relaxing music totally worked in this episode, as for a moment this episode looked like a cool and collected slice of life anime about kids playing a strategy card game with each other. Awesome! That is totally the kind of anime this anime studio should do next. Meanwhile, Tazuna meets this business guy who can't talk with much sense, and wow, the scene between the two was so boring because the conversation naturally had no flow. The business guy says things that we already knew, and man, that whole scene was boring. So after Kiyori suddenly becomes good at the card game, we find out what makes the relationship between Lily and her younger brother remotely interesting. Incest. That's right, people. Incest. Lily is in love with her brother for no reason. How deep and fascinating. Then Tazuna meets up with Kiyori because Lily had phoned Tazuna earlier, and surprise surprise, Lily and her younger brother are handshakers, and for some reason they suddenly want to fight Tazuna and Kiyori. Now what's really odd about all this is that Lily didn't know that Tazuna and Kiyori were handshakers beforehand. Surely, as a handshaker herself, Lily would have sensed it. So yeah, this episode was nice in that it used the whole setup of Tazuna having to hold Kiyori's hand or else she dies to this episode's story's advantage, as there was a natural tension when they suddenly both got separated somehow. And I really did like the card strategy game scenes as they worked with this anime style, far better than the action scenes which this anime is primarily built on. There was a massive plot hole, and I think there could have been something more unique to Lily and her brother's relationship aside from bloody incest, but overall this episode felt refreshing. Now let's see if the whole motivation for Lily and her brother for fighting Tazuna and Kiyori will be revealed, and hopefully that motivation is something more deeper and more meaningful than their relationship.